Want to know more about rock, jazz, rhythm, and blues? You got to start from the bottom up. The Bass Guitar Channel radio show with David C. Gross and Tom Semioli. Two bass road warriors tell tales, interview the greats, and spin more great music than you can shake a Chapman stick at. The Bass Guitar Channel radio show with your hosts, David C. Gross and Tom Semioli, every Monday at 8 on Cygnus Radio.
Hi, it's David Gross for the Bass Guitar Channel radio show on cygnusradio.com. Tonight, along with head honcho for knowyourbassplayer.com, Tom Semioli, we have the wonderful Bruce Thomas on the line from Britain. Hi, Tom. Hi, Bruce. Welcome to the show.
The last time I saw you was at the bottom line. What was it, 1976 or 77?
No, it'll be a long time ago, yeah.
Yeah. Well, welcome. Tom.
Hey, Bruce. Good to talk to you.
Hi, Tom.
Sorry.
I missed your trip to the UK, but maybe in a future sane occasion, I will be able to meet up.
Yes, indeed. We had a great time, actually. Talked to a lot of your peers, including, I think...
Yeah, I saw all the stuff you did, yeah.
It was a good time. And Terminal Studios was really nice, too. Deptford John was very helpful.
Yeah.
He's a great...
Okay, well,
One day. So, all right, let's just tell some stories, Bruce. Your first impression of the art form of that is rock and roll was Vince Taylor. Tell us the impression he made on you.
Oh no, he was somebody I met. But my first impression of the art form was I used to stay at my grandmother's house when I was small. To give my parents a break, I guess. I used to stay at my grandmother's house for a couple of weeks every summer. And every year there was a fair set up nearby on a patch of waste ground, I guess. And that particular year, it was sort of morphed from a country fair into one of them with, I guess you know what dodgem cars are and waltzes and all those fairground rides and things.
Right.
And I was standing there watching the things going around, and they were playing American rock singles. It was rock and roll. It wasn't even rock then. It was rock and roll, and it was the first time it was splish splash. I was taking a bath and all those kinds of things. And then, as I've just written it in a new set of memoirs, actually, which I'll bring out at some point next year. But I said then came that bomb drop moment when I heard that voice, and it was wop bop a loo up a lop bam boom, and I thought, who is that? Who's that, mister? I said, I was probably about, I don't know, in short trousers. And, that's little Richard's son. And I never heard anything. I never heard a better rock and roll voice since.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. Yeah.
And then that was the first introduction. Sorry? Okay. Well, I was going to say, then a couple of years later, you witness at the Globe in Stockton-on-Tees, Beatlemania.
Yeah. That was the first band I ever saw was the Shadows.
Okay.
Back in Cliff Richard. So that is the explanation for why I had a Fiesta Red P bass with a tortoiseshell scratch plate.
Jet Harris.
Oh.
Jet Harris. I looked at that and I thought, well, if there's a cooler bass than that, I haven't seen it yet. So that's where I went with that one.
But you did.
Well, that's interesting because I guess it was 2 weeks ago, we did an interview with Rick Wills, and
I know Rick.
Yeah, he brought up the Shadows as well as being so important to him.
Same era, with the same era, so it's unavoidable, yeah.
Yep.
But then you did like so many other British bass players at the time, Jim Rodford and Bill Wyman. You built your own bass. You had the Bruce Thomas Garden Shed bass. Tell us about that instrument.
It was hardly a signature model, I can tell you. It was pretty kind of pretty scratch built, virtually unplayable. The frets weren't filed off at the edge, so you'd rip your fingers open every time you went up and down the neck. And I thought the dots on the neck were for decoration, so for a long time I was playing with an 11-fret octave. So I was probably playing some form of Egyptian music.
I was just going to say, the microtones.
Yeah, that's the ones. Yeah, with the bend, with the frets at an angle. Yeah, I was way ahead of the game there. It was pretty. I've still got it actually. I've got it hanging on my wall outside my office here. But I found it in my mum's loft a few years ago. But you've probably seen. I'll send you a picture if you haven't got one.
Oh, I'd love to see it. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll put it in our collage when we release the video and or rather the audio.
But you did.
Right, well,
Go ahead.
I'll send you a picture later. Yeah.
But you were able to purchase a Fender bass at Hamilton's, and you said to yourself, "Now I am a bass player." What was that? You paid £50. That was a lot of money back then. Yes.
It was, but brand new. They were. I remember they were £216 new.
Wow.
So back in the day, that was probably like £1,000 bass or whatever,
Wow.
$1,500 bass. But yeah, I did get one. Somebody probably failed on the payments, and that was my Fiesta Red P bass with the tortoiseshell scratch plate, and so yeah.
And then
I've been through about 45. I tried to count it up the other day. I've been through about 45 different basses, but I came back to a classic P bass during my attraction stint anyway, for most of it anyway.
Yeah. Now, your first bands, you were in the Tremors and Roadrunner with Paul Rogers. Was Paul Rogers a good bass player?
I think we were all fairly rudimentary riffers in those days, and just doing the basic, this kind of set list that British beat bands doing R&B,
right.
Pretty pentatonic, I'd say. But he was a bit. Look, I'm not being insulting if I say he was a better singer than he was bass player. Because he's a hell of a singer.
But at that point, I mean, you had a choice. You could have been a commercial artist at the Evening Gazette or a professional musician. When did you think that you had a chance? Go ahead.
My plan was to go to London and work on the Sunday Times as a graphic designer. But two of the guys at the newspaper, as you know, were in a band, and they roped me in as a bass player because Paul Rogers wanted to be up front singing. And then I guess we were the best local band in the area, and we just did what the best local band in the area did at the time, which was move to London and try and make it as professionals. And three of us did.
Well, you did. When you moved to London, you got your picture in your local paper, and I guess that was your first taste of recognition. Local band off to seek fame and fortune.
Local band. I saw that my mum kept the cutting, and she moved house a couple of years ago, and I found all the cuttings going way back. And it's local band seeks fame and fortune. You know the story. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice that she kept it all that.
I've still got them all. In fact, I've got a huge box full of press cuttings. I don't know what to do with them, so I'm thinking of maybe having a Facebook competition.
You mentioned Melody Maker, Bruce. You had an encounter, and a very influential one, I guess, with Peter Green and Jeremy Spencer, where Peter Green says to you about putting the notes together. Talk about your reverence for Peter Green, and why did he stand out among the guitar players of that era?
I've just written, I don't know what it's, a eulogy or a soliloquy. Some guy I know has just written a Peter Green book, and he asked me to contribute to it. So I think he only wanted a paragraph, but he got a chapter. And I auditioned for the original Fleetwood Mac. Basically, I answered an ad that Peter Green put in the paper, and he and Jeremy Spencer came to the house I was sharing with the drummer and the rest of the Roadrunners who'd gone off for the day. So there was me and the drummer, Peter Green, Jeremy Spencer, and we jammed for a couple of hours. And he was very kind. He said, "Oh, you've got all the right records, B.B. King live at the Regal." He said, he basically said, "I think it's a bit too soon for you." He said, "You've got all the right notes. You're just not really." Literally only turned pro 3 3 months before. Mm-hmm. So it was when the first came to London. I mean, it was too soon, but he didn't just sort of pack up and say, "Oh, forget it, kid,"
Right.
I'm off. So we did play together for a while, and I did go and see his band more than I've ever seen any other band. And as you know, when I did join another band with Peter Bardens, a keyboard player who had Peter Green and Mick Fleetwood in his original band.
Right.
Before I went into his, Peter got up and jammed with us at the Marquee, and then later played on a solo album of Peter's that I played bass on. So played with him 3 or 4 times, I guess, and there's just nobody has come within a million miles of the depth of feeling and that he can get out of a guitar. There's just something totally special about him. He was not a musician, he's a shaman. He even said that he had to stop playing the guitar because it was breaking his heart. And the sound wasn't coming from the guitar, it was coming from the depths of his soul via his guitar. That's all I can say. And it reached into the depths of my soul, if you like. It's like Beethoven once said, "From the heart to the hearts of men," and Pete Green had that same quality. There's absolutely, he wasn't just the best guitarist I've ever heard, he's the best musician I've ever heard. It's simple as that.
No, I can't disagree with you. One of my good friends, you might know him, John Altman.
Right, yes, I know that.
Yeah, he's played with him a bunch with, I guess with Duster Bennett was playing with him at that point. And when John was over here for a little bit, he used to tell me these wonderful stories about Peter. I know everyone was trying to think, oh, well, it's because the pickups were this, that, the other thing. No.
Oh, well, he had that. He was the tone master, but that wasn't just an accident. He knew how to work those pickups. He made the most of a happy accident, if you like, and got a unique sound. But there's a million videos on YouTube as how to reverse the pickups and all the rest of it, and people playing with an approximation to the sound or an approximation to his melodic minor scale, or some of them come very close, and a lot of them are very reverential and sincere. But he was he was just a one-off. Yeah. Musicians of that ilk, one-offs. And I know you have your own favourites like Miles Davis and things, and Thelonious Monk, and I'd probably put Donald Fagen in the same bracket. As musicians that are just a little bit special. Yeah. But Peter Green definitely is my main man. And always will be.
I was fortunate enough to see him a few times in New York. So, that was a great experience. And once or twice in a club, so I got a real close-up look, so that was great.
So you said that in his when he left the original band, he did sort of he got into a very Jerry Garcia thing, didn't he? And did 8-hour jams.
Yeah, he did a jam record.
What was it? The End of the Game? Was that the name of it?
Yeah, but he did gigs like that. They would do. He said, "I'll do gigs with you, but no set list. We just play for 8 hours."
Fabulous musician.
He's one of the few people that you could listen to for 8 hours.
Bruce, now you joined the band, or you're in the band Village, and you switched to a 6-string bass. Was that inspired at all by what Jack Bruce was doing at the time?
That was influenced by Jack Bruce, yeah.
Yeah. Were you still in search of your perfect instrument, or?
Well, I had the P bass because it's like I didn't realise that was the classic instrument. So I totted it up the other day. I've had 45, 50 different basses over the years, even though it might seem like I've just had one or two. But I was changing them almost on a weekly basis. And even then switching the pickups round and or putting Guild pickups on a Fender and Gibson pickups on a Fender and Fender pickups on a Dan Electro and Dan Electro, all the usual.
Well, you think at that point in time, the bass was still a relatively new instrument. So, I mean, when you think about technology today and then back then, you really had to mix and match and experiment on your own.
I'm not a great fan of basses with more than 4 strings.
Right.
I'm not a great fan of basses that look like if you took the neck off them and put 4 legs on them, they'd make a nice coffee table.
That's very possible with this one. I'm looking at one. It's sitting right next to
I'm looking at the one you've got with a fretless one with pink strings, and you could put legs on that. All the figured walnut and all.
Yeah, well, I always say that, it takes a tough man to wear pink strings. But it is sitting right next to a black jazz bass. So, and then there's an upright nearby as well.
Yeah, I know. Well, my line is, I've got an 88-string bass, but I call it a piano.
Yes. I've got one of those too. Actually, we'll get to it a little later, but I was interested in hearing about your signature bass because.
Oh, let's talk about it now. Go ahead.
Yeah, what's that? Well, I did eventually. My Attractions P bass got stolen, and I couldn't replace it. So I decided I'd actually build one from scratch. And my friend Barry Morehouse, who runs a shop called the Bass Centre in London, that specialises in bass guitars, obviously. And he said, "Well, if you're going to build one, somebody else might want one." So we basically collaborated on me trying to recreate it, which I think I've been largely successful in doing, and in some instances improving on. So I'm not that, it wasn't like a talisman. It was a good bass, but everything's replaceable, as I tell the ex-wife. I mean, even with the Attractions, I used a wall bass and Dan Electro and various things. So it was great for the for the golden period, as you might call it. It figured on all the gigs and records, but from about 1990 onwards, I always used a Dan Electro on records anyway, because all the American producers prefer using them for recording.
They are fantastic basses to record with. They really are.
Oh, they're brilliant. Yeah. I've got all I've got hanging on my wall is a signature profile bass and two Dan Electros at the moment, plus my original one my garden shed one.
Wow.
So that's it.
Now I know.
I remember seeing the Hollies back in the 60s, and I think Eric Haydock had a long one.
Yeah. Well, he also had a 6-string, didn't he, at one point?
Yes, indeed. But really, when you think about the 6-string bass back then, it was really just a Jaguar guitar that was basically almost like a baritone almost. Now, did you play, just out of curiosity, did you play that with a pick?
No, I don't think I've ever used a pick except for effect, like on a song like New Lace Sleeves or something, which is obviously played with a pick for the percussive riff thing. But I don't think I ever played with a pick even when I started learning.
Because the strings on that 6-string are very, very close together.
I know, they're very close together and hard to play, which is probably why I didn't have it very long. In fact, I went from the 6-string to a longhorn as well.
Interesting. I love those basses.
I want another longhorn. Nowadays, the major consideration of a bass guitar is its weight.
Yes. Yeah.
If it's made out of styrofoam, that'll do me.
Believe it or not, that fretless is 7 pounds, which is, very, very light for a big instrument, and it's lighter than some 4-string B basses.
Well, I guess if it's heavy, you can have a thinner wood, can't you? A thinner body.
Yeah, and it's cut out, it's chambered, so...
All right. What, at the back?
Well, actually, yes, but when you look at it again, you'll see this it looks almost like a design of circles, but they're actually holes. They're actually acoustic holes.
All right. Good stuff.
Good coffee table. So tell us, Bruce, you go on, you make records with Quiver, you tour with Pink Floyd, Mark Bolan, and T-Rex, The Who. obviously you had that encounter with Pete where he told you to take drugs. Luckily you didn't listen to him. And then of course you do session work with Al Green. What do you absorb from watching these artists? Because you talk about Pink Floyd, they had such a heavy persona. Mark Bolan was a showman, as was all the members of The Who. How did that, what effect did that have on you as a player?
I don't know. I guess it were different times, and I guess it was easier to mix with people that would be inaccessible these days in the equivalent of, I remember even when I was at home, when I was still, I'd just left school, and we had a couple of local clubs, and I remember bands coming through. The Who came through, Cream, Spencer Davis with Stevie Winwood, all those bands. They used to get £70 a night. That was their fee. And they were the normal groups got 40, the big groups got 70. I mean, Spencer Davis got for £70 when their record Keep On Rolling went to number 1. And they used to, and The Who, and I used to go backstage. I mean, I went backstage with the members of the Roadrunners, and Mick, our guitar, he just picked up Eric Clapton's gold top Les Paul and started playing it. And Ginger Baker, that well-known curmudgeon, came over. You got permission to play that? And he said it was okay. Well, it's all right then. So, but can you imagine, that sort of thing happening? And going and seeing Pete Townshend. Got any tips for an aspiring musician? Take loads of drugs, as he said. Yeah. So and I met, and eventually, when I did jumping forward a bit, there was a super session type thing with Paul McCartney when he did the Rockestra thing.
Right. You were with all those guys, sure.
I was with Elvis at that point, but all the people on that were like Pete Townshend was on it, and Dave Gilmour, and Hank Marvin.
Okay.
So it was like summed up everything to that point. Guys, and McCartney obviously, because I saw Beatles live when I was knee high to a grasshopper, and suddenly there I was with them, and I thought, right, that's a seminal moment, if you like. But I've been very lucky in that I don't know whether it was normal or whether it was peculiar to me, but I've had several of those kind of seminal moments, when I think, that's a chapter. Yeah. Well, I just watched Paul McCartney and I think they're all American musicians, aren't they? He's got now at the Cavern, and he does the Eddie Cochran thing, opens with the Eddie Cochran song that got him in the Beatles, and then does Magical Mystery Tour as the second song. And I just thought, oh, bloody hell, this guy has got it. If he just wrote the song, if he just sang it, if he just wrote the melody, if he just played the bass part, any of those would be deserving of accolade.
Absolutely.
But all of it together, I thought, now then, and then he played Hello, Goodbye and a few things. I thought, oh God, it doesn't get any better than that. Those bass. Now I know why I was motivated to play the bass.
Yeah.
Because there was McCartney at the time, Jack Bruce, John Entwistle, Doc Dunn, James Jamerson. If you didn't have enough inspiration there, then when would you ever,
Well, you've had quite a few encounters with Paul. The one with Michael Jackson, which you tell in your book. You've got, it's the stuff of comedy classics, I think.
Well, I didn't realise until recently that apparently Paul McCartney had a feud with Michael Jackson for quite a while.
Well, he took all the Beatles song rights, right? That's
publishing.
Yeah.
So is that that's the basis of it, is it?
Yeah.
Because Paul McCartney got all Buddy Holly's songs, though, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Yes,
that's true.
But long story short, I went in to say I was in the studio, and the Attractions were in one studio, and McCartney was in a neighbouring studio. I went down to say hello, as you do.
Right.
And there was this young kid in there, and I thought, what's he? So this is Michael, and I thought, oh, hello, Michael. I thought this. I'm not making it. I literally thought this kid was either on work experience or he won a competition to spend a day in the studio with Paul McCartney or something. And hi. And then after about 20 minutes, they talked, and I thought, oh my God, that's Michael Jackson. So there you go. Yeah.
Well, Bruce, you were mentioning Hello Goodbye, and frankly, I think that's one of the most complete McCartney bass lines. If you isolate that bass line, it's very much like a Bach fugue. It's so perfect.
Yeah. Well, I think possibly one of the most musical bass line is Something. But,
sure. You could,
but that, funny enough, you see, this, I made a few notes before because I can see tuition and things, and your recent, one of your recent posts was about the diminished scale.
Correct.
And I never had formal lessons or even read books. I kind of figured it out by the seat of my pants, and so for a long time my early career was more riff based and pentatonic,
Right.
And then I had a kind of epiphany where I realized that I don't know, it's triads, I guess, isn't it? That if you play 4 frets and 3 frets, that's a major, and if you play 3 frets and 4 frets, that's a minor, and if you play 3 frets then 3 frets, that's a diminished, and 4 frets and 4 frets, that's an augmented. Then I worked out why the chords were called sixths and sevenths. and then I worked out you didn't have to play root notes all the time. You could play thirds and fifths,
right,
instead of root notes, and that way you could construct a bass line that went over the chords without sticking to the roots. And then, of course, the first thing you do is you get onto a air on a G string or something like a descending bass line, Albinoni or any of those, as a Bach fugue, as you say. And then I realised what McCartney was doing, and then around it all came together when I started playing with Elvis, who was writing classic pop songs, and suddenly I could actually construct proper bass lines. And then, so there are two really schools of bass playing. There's the European classical tradition, the Bach, Paul McCartney kind of, and then there's the, blues-based R&B pentatonic riffy side. And those are really the two approaches, and you can mix and match them to a degree as well.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But it was a big discovery to me that there are couple of songs. If you remember, Every Day I Write the Book, which is just playing inversion, arpeggios, inversions of the chords. And then something like Party Girl, which has a middle 8, which goes between a few chords. But what I did as an exercise was try, whatever the first chord was, I tried to find the highest note on one string that fitted with that, either a root, a third, or a fifth, that fitted with that note, then slide down to the lowest note I could find on the next chord, then slide up to the next highest note that fitted the next chord, and down to the next lowest note, you see. So it was going up and down, glissando up and down the neck, finding the harmonies to the chord changes, which basically sounded like somebody tottering around a bit drunk. So that was, I guess, an epiphany that you could, A, do it musically, and then B, do it artistically to fit in with the mood of the song. So that was, I guess, about as revolutionary to me as learning to play the riff to roll over Beethoven.
That is a perfect explanation.
Well, I think of I think of the bass parts to Party Girl and, let's say, Accidents Will Happen. And it's that type of approach where you're...
Yeah, Accidents Will Happen. The other thing I realized is I was listening to Beethoven once, the Pastoral Symphony, and I thought, wow. And then I thought, and I picked up a bass and I went, that's just a simple tune. And I thought, they're just playing tunes, simple tunes, and that, I'm sure, influenced things like Accidents Will Happen.
Right.
There's a descending line, but then there's a sort of little counterpoint melody up the top, in places, so, and then, as I say, I put things together like, I was thinking of your lesson on diminished, and I thought, well, that's shipbuilding, is it worth it?
Right.
Three frets. For the
and what's amazing of the diminished, there are only 3 diminished scales. Because
there will, because they overlap. Yeah.
Exactly. And what I enjoy doing with this stuff is demystifying it, because I too came late to it. The first 6-7 years before I went to music school, I couldn't even read a note outside of.
No, well, I still can't.
Yeah.
I still can't, but I mean, I use the Nashville system, you know.
Yeah, the numbers.
You know,
Yes.
145 thing, and then of course I discovered not that long ago why a relative minor is called a relative minor, and the notes of A minor are the same as the notes of C. If you use C as a root note, it's C major. If you use A as a root note, it's A minor. And then I thought, so if you want to play blues to a melodic thing in C, you don't try and fiddle around in C, you just use A minor, and then you can play a melodic blues solo in C over the. So all of that is really the sum total of my musical knowledge.
Well, it certainly worked out for you, huh, Bruce?
Well, you can't underestimate. What you can't underestimate is just singing the bass line to yourself and then finding where the notes are.
Right.
A lot of the time, I think I just heard the bass line and then worked out what it was. You know. So I think it was, you know, constructed back to front, as it were.
Well, you know, you take one of your songs, Chelsea, it's all groove, and then you throw some other stuff in, or Pump It Up, for instance, where you're really
Well, I can tell you where both those lines came from, and you probably heard the stories anyway, but Chelsea came from touring with The Who, so that answers one of your early questions. When they did My Generation live, it modulates from A to B,
right?
And there's a sort of a thing, you know, a drums and thrashing away and power chords, and Whistle starts playing dum da 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 dum da da dum dum da 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 dum da da da, and I thought, well, B minor, A, G, and da da da. So when we came with that, I went dum da da dum da da da. So it's taken straight off the Who's coda to My Generation.
Right.
And the Pump It Up is a composite riff from we were touring with a band called Richard Hell and the Voidoids once, and they had a song called You Got to Lose, which goes which I thought were really nice notes. But we also used to do a cover of the Everly Brothers' Price of Love, which goes dum 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 dum.
Yep, that's it.
So that's Brian Ferry covered it, didn't he? And so I thought, what if he put the rhythm of the Price of Love with the notes of You've Got to Lose, dum da 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 dum da 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 dum. And I thought, well, you can't do that. It's got to be a 2-bar riff, not one. You know, what's the other best riff ever? Oh, You Really Got Me. So that was absolutely how that was thought out or felt out, if you like. You know, I probably just did it and then thought, oh, that's where that's come from.
This is David Gross for the Bass Guitar Channel Radio on cygnusradio.com, along with Tom Semioli and featured bassist Bruce Thomas.
Oftentimes you do something and then realise what you've stolen.
Well, it pays to know your history. It's important that bass players know the history of their instrument.
Well, a couple of weeks ago, we were interviewing Carmine Rojas. He was telling us about the bass line of the China Girl. He said a few days earlier he was listening to the marimba part on Under My Thumb.
Right. Well, here's a good one. Do you remember we did a song called Charm School?
Yes, of course. Right.
And that was a lift from by Level 42. It's the you know, that's where it was taken and adapted. It's not a straight lift, but it's the one that I remember at the time we were doing that album, and I had a wall bass, and I thought, oh, I've got to get a bit modern here. We can't keep doing the English beat group thing. We've done country, we've done, you know, soul. Let's see, I've got to get modern here. Let's listen to Level 42. And I thought, well, I'm not going to start doing all the Thunder Thumbs stuff, but I can pinch a few of the notes, you know, and get some ideas.
Well, you really did stretch out on Imperial Bedroom and those records.
Yeah.
Great tone, and the bass really shone through. And you're doing, your counter melodies, your chords, and I guess to some degree Elvis just kind of gave you free rein on that.
Yeah. Nobody ever said don't play that.
Okay.
I've got a feeling that when Nick Lowe was producing and everything, he was, and if there was any consternation, he'd say, "Listen, this guy knows what he's doing. Just,
Right.
Because a couple of times Nick said to me, "I don't know how the hell you do it, but it's great." Just he couldn't work out, So I just plowed. I did things that was. Do you really mean to do that? And I go, "Yep." And that was it. There was a song called Tokyo Storm Warning.
Oh yeah, sure.
On Blood and Chocolate.
Lots of nice upper registers. Yeah.
It's like a Maggie's Farm riff that just goes dun 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 dun, right? But when it goes up to the fourth, to the next chord, I don't move the bottom note up. I go back to the one, so it goes dun 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 dun, and then it goes dun 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 dun. They keep playing that one note through the whole song.
It's a pedal tone,
but it sounds weird, but then it's supposed to be a weird song, isn't it?
Well, it is. The recording of that song, right, was kind of like very lo-fi recording on that.
Yeah, it's totally everybody in one room and one mic.
Yeah. It's interesting, just you mentioned Nick Lowe, another fabulous bass player, about your peer group. You had, it was like to me, it was a golden age of bass. There was you, there was Norman Watroy, of course, Andrew Bodner, who did a lot of work with...
Graham Maby.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Colin Moulding.
Yep.
Bruce Corston. Yeah. There was a few around, yeah.
And it seems like they all combine that love of R&B with the melodicism of a Paul McCartney or a John Entwistle.
Yeah. I guess I wasn't the only one doing it, but why give them publicity?
Exactly. Well, Tom and I always talk about this. We look at Jocko as the cutoff of the pre-Jocko. All of us who grew up with actually Willie Dixon playing string bass on up, and then the let's show off our chops post Jocko period. And it's interesting with all the folks that we have interviewed up to, and including you. It really is Jameson done. It's what we grew up on the radio. And what's funny is the bass players were the least heard on most radios, and yet we knew.
Well, I didn't realise I'd seen Jaco Pastorius when he was in Wayne Cochran and the CC Riders.
Okay, right, yeah.
Right, we did a gig in Davis, California, and the hotel was like a resort hotel we were staying in. It had a ballroom, and there was a band there called Wayne Cochran and the CC Riders, and somebody told me later, said, who was playing bass in that band? It was Jaco Pastorius, and I consider him one of the four cornerstones of rock. Now, that's McCartney, Entwistle, Dunn, and Jameson are the four cornerstones, but I consider Jaco Pastorius as one of the four cornerstones, but he's in the middle. He's on the flag. He's the flagpole, right? So I watched a guy doing an analysis of one of his parts the other day, and the first chord, I think I forget, it might be one of the things he did with Joni Mitchell. The first chord took about 3/4 of an hour, and I got it to the degree that I just did that little exposition earlier about my understanding of the rudiments of music and how they gradually, took 20 years to dawn on me. I think it would take 2,000 years to figure out a Jaco Pastorius bass part to the point where I was satisfied that I understood it all, but I got what he was doing in the first chord, the inversions and the melodies and the technical, basis of it, and the ability to even play it at that speed. And I thought, he's just played my whole career in a bar, So fair play, I get it. I get it that it's not just what I call lamppost climbing, which is just whizzing about the neck playing things that sound technically brilliant but are meaningless. It's absolutely based in solid musicianship of a highly sophisticated and competent nature, and I can see why Jaco Pastorius to some people has had the same effect as Peter Green had on me. I completely get that. But I'm just not technically competent enough to follow your lessons, never mind Jaco Pastorius. So I just... I'm just happy with what I did, and that people like it. But he's obviously got to be of the highest caliber.
Did Jaco now? I mean, obviously, Jaco really came to recognition in '76. Did he have as profound an effect on British players, you think, as Americans? Because what happened shortly after Jaco? Now the fretless came into vogue. You had guys, Pino Palladino, all the players with the Brian Ferry, Spandau Ballet, all those records started using fretless players.
Well, it might. I mean, I had a fretless for a while, but I don't know if. I think possibly a lot of the people like Alan Spenner and things were influenced by him and things like that. I mean, there was a guy I liked who played one of those weird Steinberger basses called Jamaluddin Takuma.
Jamal. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Played with Ornette Coleman.
So, I kind of liked. I learned one of his riffs. I couldn't do. Jaco Pastorius is one of these guys like Larry Carlton on the guitar. They've just got total command of their instrument, and sometimes they're almost too good.
Yeah.
To follow. That's why I like Donald Fagen, because he makes chord work accessible to me. I don't know what he's playing, but I know it works, and I know it's clever, and it sounds really good. And I know that it's a kind of more accessible version of Thelonious Monk or something.
Right.
Who's another one that I go, wow, that's really pushing the boundaries. I don't know what he's doing, but I know it sounds good.
Well, Jaco also was a master at ballads. I love a remark you made and things like that. Like I know, yes, he was the tone, the chops, and all that, but he was a beautiful, beautiful ballad player.
Yeah. I mean, I've got no criticism, only the fact that I'm not that good.
Well, you did, obviously with the Attractions, you got a very high profile, and you did session work.
Yeah.
You talk about that. You did you did some songs with the Pretenders. You did Billy Bragg. What was your approach to doing sessions?
One of the things I used to like to do from fairly early on is put the bass on last.
Okay.
Maybe do a guide part, but say the real bass part goes on when all the vocal overdubs are on, all the guitar solos, everything else. I'll put the bass on last, because the bass doesn't just bind the drums, rhythm instruments. The bass binds the kick drum to the vocal, right? So they're the two things that melodically and rhythmically I try and bind together to give the whole song a structure, a spine. So, I mean, I didn't get on too well with Chrissie Hynde, because she said you'd be doing yourself a favour if you didn't go above the 5th fret.
Right, yeah, that's one of the funny parts of the book, yeah.
She wasn't very keen on my symphonic approach.
Yeah, but then let me ask you this. If you call Bruce Thomas, why would you tell him to do that? I mean,
Well, maybe she didn't realise.
Okay.
Yeah, I did a straight. I played like the guy, a previous bass player.
Right, just a root 3rd, 5th, simple chord outlines. Yeah.
Yeah, to be honest, it actually was better when I followed her advice. So I can't deny that. Other things, I think a lot of people. Well, Mitchell Froome summed it up quite well.
Right.
The producer, he said, what we've got functional parts and we've got creative parts. Right? The verse is functional, but when you get to this bit, you can be creative. i.e., because I have done sessions where people have sent tapes from America, and I've done 4 overdubs and sent them back, and he said, we can't use any of it, it's too, they can't even comp a basic track of it. No, he said, you just play all right, and then you go off on one. So I have suffered from that, but I find it usually works if you work with a producer and put the bass on last is a good one as well. I did a couple of albums with Suzanne Vega, which I think are really pleased with. Really like the bass work on that, but that was very much direct, under the auspices of Mitchell Froome. So
I love that track, As Girls Go. Richard Thompson's on that track as well.
That's right, yeah.
Well, that was actually Paul's work ethic, I understand, on the White Album and Abbey Road, where he would because obviously they had more time in the studio. Paul would lay the bass lines down last after everyone went home.
Yeah, well, that's actually, you've just hit the nail on the head there, because that's when I insisted on doing that, because when we did Imperial Bedroom, Jeff Emmerich was engineering it, and he told me a lot about, even in the days when they only had
4-track?
Had 4-track.
Yeah.
Even when they only had 4-track, they bounce mix everything down onto 3 and leave one from Sgt. Pepper onwards, certainly.
Yeah.
They left 1 track for the bass, and he's, and the compression, and that's why he could go off on one and do these things at the end, because if they didn't have multiple tracks to take it, but what they did have was that they could take any good bits from a bass track, put it onto a stereo tape and comp it together and fly it in, and fly in the whole bass part back onto the 1 track. So in a roundabout way, they had the facility to multiple take bass part and edit it down to 1 really good one, which is why you get all these nice bass improvisations at the end of certain things, Hey Bulldog and Miss Magical Mystery Tour and all that era, when tracks fading out, the bass is going off on a little adventure. That's when I said, that sounds like a good idea. I think I'll start doing it. But also gets you off the hook for having to play the thing live and without making mistakes. Because there used to be a thing, didn't there? The thing that engineers used to have to do was when you were overdubbing and there was a bit wrong, they used to have to punch you in and punch you out.
Right, with the tape.
You're playing hit record and then hit, stop and not clip any notes. So they had the hard work,
They used to say, you punch, we play?
Yeah, the days of punch-ins were gone then, weren't they?
Yeah.
So,
Well, you mentioned that comment on how really Pro Tools has changed the whole game, because is it really necessary now to be a virtuoso at your instrument? You look at your career, you paid your dues, you worked the clubs, you toured night after night after night, so when you went into the studio, you were proficient, but now you could kind of be a novice at a bass and just sort of cut and paste it together.
Yeah, I did some stuff with my nephew as a DJ, and I did some electronic dance music with him, and I don't think I even played bass on things. I think we did, there's a program called Recycle, where you get James Brown drum parts and bass parts and chop them round and make new riffs and grooves out of them. And I remember saying to him, do you know how many instruments are on this track? Because you'd use things like five tambourines and, 4 shakers and 4 basses and 2 snares and things, just to get all the musical, the ear candies and stuff. And I said, there's over 200 tracks on this,
oh my God.
all independently mixable and with EQable. He said, let's filter this, or let's do that. And you've got solid state mixing, effects, soft, virtual amplifiers, virtual studios. Let's have him playing a Fender Twin Reverb in Air London for the guitar part, and let's have him playing and you think it's just ridiculous. Because I remember when Fairlights came in and Peter Gabriel got one, they were like 60,000 quid, and within a few years you could do it on a 250 quid laptop. So it's it's different now. It's like, I guess it's the same reason why the blacksmith shop in my village doesn't do much trade anymore, because most people drive cars.
Well, yeah, but you do go back to the basics with Spencer Brown. That's
yeah, we did, but that was done on a laptop.
Yeah, but it sounded more organic than a lot of.
We tried was called back to the start, and we did try and be as old school as possible, but
right.
he programmed the drums and played most of the stuff, and I arranged it and played bass and co-mixed it with him and things, and came up with the production ideas. But then I knew about things like global reverb and all the old tricks.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's just the convenience, obviously, is now that you can make a record in your living room.
Yeah, I mean, we did the record over the phone. I only spent 2 days at his house for the whole album. I've only seen him about 4 times ever.
Talk about the joys of being a writer now. You have no egotistical band members, no tour buses, no dodgy managers, no broken beer bottles.
Well, but I'm as dodgy as all of them myself, I realise. I've still got to deal with it. It's not the thing with writing. You don't get the immediate feedback that you get with playing music, do you? So, but I enjoy it. I've got to grips with it. I know what I'm doing now, writing-wise.
Regarding your Bruce Lee books, when did that start? It was after your tenure with Elvis, wasn't it?
It started in the hiatus between the first 10 years and the second 3 years, where, back in the 90s, I was just basically a session musician in that period, and I took up Kung Fu because I got mugged one night, and it annoyed me. So, and then it was my teacher who showed me some Bruce Lee films, and I said, I'll have to find out about this. And I thought, well, if I write about it, then I'm learning. I'm not doing it to teach. I'm doing it for people that don't know anything either. Seemed like a good opportunity to take other people on the same journey, as it were. Same as with the signature bass. If I want one, somebody else might want one. And the same with the Bruce Lee biography. So and I've just done another one. I've just done a picture heavy one now. So it's got over 200 images in it. Because on the basis that every picture is worth 1,000 words, this is about 250,000 words.
Well, do you find that certain philosophical things that Bruce was involved in affect your bass playing and your lifestyle and things of that ilk?
In as much as I appreciate the things that he did, but I don't take him as a guru. I take him as a kindred spirit. So we both, I would say, I've been into certainly something like Taoist philosophy comes from Bruce Lee, but I've always had an eye out for many things. And in fact, when I do my new memoirs, which is less musical and more what I did well, if the first one was rough notes, this is the gaps between the notes.
Okay.
This is the other stuff that explains quite a bit, and there'll be one or two things people absolutely don't know, but I've waited a long time, because when you start revealing some of the things that I reveal, you're kind of setting yourself up for a bit of trolling or whatever. Mm-hmm. I've hung fire on it until it doesn't matter. But it's interesting, and I think most people will get it.
I think one of the things he said really struck home with me about learning and learn everything you can, figure out, I'm paraphrasing, of course.
Absorb what is useful and leave the rest. Is that maybe that one?
I just love it. I just love it. It's real life.
I like the guy who said, there was a Japanese designer who said, there are two ways. You can learn what you need to do and then do it, or you can just do it and then figure out what you just did. And I think that my approach was do it, and later I figured out what I was doing later. I guess, I'm not sure Vincent van Gogh had many art lessons.
Or headphones.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Earbud. Not many earbuds. Yeah.
That's it.
But, when you go and see, I went to an exhibition a couple of years ago and I thought, it's so far ahead of the game that you just think, it must have been difficult being him. Well, it was.
Yeah.
It was,
I read his book, Letters to Theo, which is really quite extraordinary. You get into Van Gogh's mind and that book selection. Great stuff. And there was I don't know if you ever saw the movie Rush for Life.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Douglas, yeah.
Yep.
Yes, I did. But I went to the exhibition in London a couple of years ago, and I mean the paint's just stunning. And you do whatever you say, the difference between seeing them, in real life or in an art book is light years. But there was one page of his diary with just his handwriting, and I thought, that handwriting, I looked at it for about 10 minutes because it spoke volumes about all sorts of things, really. This is his handwriting, and I can understand quite a lot about him just from looking at that. Sounds pretentious, but there we are.
No, not at all. Not at all.
I guess it's like somebody once said to me, and I think it's true. He said, you watch a musician come on stage or something, put the guitar on, put the bass on, sit behind the drums, and before they play a note, you know if they're any good or not.
Well, actually, I think that's you hear a lot of players when they talk about their auditions, and they, just by the way they walked in the room and they put their instrument on, they got the gig.
Yeah, I think so.
Some of the tracks we're going to play, if you want to reflect on them, one you did early with Al Stewart, I'm Falling, that album, the Orange LP. Yeah, that's a kind of a transitional album for him. How was it? What was your approach with Al? Were you pretty much left to your own devices? Did they, give you direction there?
No, well, I did some of them with Tim Rennick, and who was the guitarist of Quiver. So we kind of came as a unit sort of thing, and they were good fun. The producer John Anthony was always a good laugh.
Oh yeah, okay.
And. But Rick Wakeman was on quite a lot of them, and he was a real, what he's like. He was
always a character, yeah.
He'd wait until we were 10 minutes into this huge ballad about Napoleon marching on Moscow, and he'd creep up behind Alan, tickle him under the ribs, and wreck the whole take. So he didn't get thrown out, so I guess we were all on fairly safe ground because he was the joker in the pack. But Al, I always thought he's a nice enough chap, but I don't think he was, let me put it this way, I don't think Otis Redding was in any danger from his singing point of view. He's a master sommelier, he's a master of wine, is Al Stewart, and he addressed the French winemakers conference in France in French about wine once, so that's his claim to fame.
All right, very impressive. And then you did that track with Billy Bragg. She's got a new spell.
Yeah, I did a few tracks with Billy, actually. Yeah. I didn't realise what a lefty he was at the time, so... But there we go, yeah.
We'll edit that out if you'd like.
He's a nice chap.
Tom, anything else?
That's it. I think we've got plenty. I mean, you pretty much touched upon everything, Bruce. It was great to chat with you. When Bass Player magazine wrote that article when the Attractions first came out, I was a very 16-year-old impressionable kid. I saw your first few tours here, and I did what Bass Player instructed. It said, play along with this Elvis Costello song, but don't play Bruce Thomas's bass lines. So I took my Fender bass out, and I played it.
Yeah, just play the root notes.
And it didn't sound too good.
No.
But Rough Notes was a fabulous book. Great insight to that whole era,
Well, I'll keep in touch, and when I've got the new one out, I'll send you a copy.
Yeah, great, fabulous.
Please do.
All right.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much.
Nice talking, guys. All right, bye-bye.
Yeah.
Well, that's it for tonight, folks. Thanks again to Bruce Thomas and Tom Semioli. We're going to see you next week with another great show. We have an interview with Leo Lyons from 10 Years After. It should be very exciting. Hope you will join us. In the meantime, have a great week, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.